there we go. We're live in both spots. Well,
Back at it.
live in one spot, I guess, on YouTube. The recording will be later, but we're
Yeah.
going. We're
Has
here.
has that process made it a little easier on your end? Like, for those that don't know, Ross is
Yeah.
the mastermind of everything. So like when we go live, I think that benefits you to some degree, right?
Yeah, it does, and it makes it easier for just for like because editing and uploading an hour and plus long video is a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And especially when that's not like really what I do. I just have a basic enough understanding to like get a version of it up there.
Yeah.
But when you do lives, it just clips it and automatically uploads. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And what's nice is the software that we use to record these like actually clips really good video and audio quality as we're doing it live.
Yep.
So I don't have to do like the only thing I could, dress it up and put like the intro music and a like an intro video clip on it or do that or whatever. Or like we could just jump right into the middle of a conversation kind of like we do when we start it anyways and just leave it uploaded exactly how it is, which makes it
Yeah.
way easier for me.
Well, I saw a funny guy. Well, he's not a funny guy. I don't follow him, but I've seen him around on a like that. He's a big guy, powerlifter, bodybuilder type.
Yeah.
Probably more strongman or powerlifter. Definitely not a lean guy, but he's got a tattoo head and full tattoo body. And he's talking about like, my God, if I have to see one more video of somebody doing tricep extensions, where they put it in like black and white, and they put this montage of like 300 type music, and they're straining their ass off. He's like, it's tricep pushdowns, bro. Like,
Right.
just show it for what it is. He was like, but that's the thing, people don't care that you're doing tricep press downs. They want to be entertained.
Yeah.
Like they want to just be like, and that's weird, man, because we talked about it a little before we started, and actually I appreciate those 15-20 minute conversations beforehand as much as I do the hour. But talking about somebody shooting like a recurve bow, like you take somebody and you just watch them shoot a bow, it's not that exciting. And they put like flames and music and crafty editing, and it's like, holy shit, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. But the problem is, I have found repeatedly that most of the people with the valuable, that nugget of information that I'm looking to get me from where I'm at to where I want to be, are not people who are spending hours and hours editing, because their hours and hours comes as experience in the field or doing their craft. So it's a weird juxtaposition, as like the experts are almost overlooked and ignored, whereas like these pseudo experts with editing are the name and the piece that everybody associates with. The other thing
they're just better at the marketing front and getting in front of. They're just get better at getting in front of people.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
What's strange about that too, you start with like Netflix commercials. Well, now you have to pay for the premium to not get the commercials. And Instagram is nothing but a commercial.
Yes.
Literally just ad after ad. Even if it's not an ad, it's somebody wearing a shirt, this or wearing that. And dude, again, I understand the irony. I have sponsor companies that I work with, but it's like I try to weave those things into my reality. Like, I'm wearing this shirt from Wink's Bar because I like this shirt. I'm wearing this hat from Daisy May Hat Company because I like Gage and I like the hats. This necklace from Richard Baguette and these bracelets from Richard Baguette because I like the bracelets. It's not because he said, hey man, will you pimp my bracelets? Will you pimp my sweatshirt or whatever? That comes after. It's like, man, I really like your stuff. How can I help you out? And most of the time for me, there's no monetary exchange. No, you're a good. I want to share that. And it's such a, I don't know that it's a foreign concept to some of these people, but dude, in my position with Swornex, you talk to people that are in that space a lot, and some people don't even want to talk to you unless there's money on the table, and it's like, what the hell, man? It's just it's a strange direction. I don't want commercials. I'm tired of being advertised. Number one social media platform is Instagram. It's like that is a commercial, a living, breathing, non-stop commercial. So
on a like kind of a side note, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I think it's about one of the funniest things ever with all of the streaming services lately. Like, remember when they first like really kicked off? It was like, hey, look, no ads, one low monthly price, you get all the content, all the stuff, you know. And then, like you said, all of them realize that they actually now need, because they have these huge production movies. I mean, or like these huge series that they're doing that cost billions of dollars to make a year.
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh, well, we actually need some more revenue. How do we do this? And now they're like, hey, what about ads?
Yeah.
Like, so now they've introduced like these different levels. And so I always imagine, I always imagine them like in this meeting where people have forgotten what TV was, and they're like, all that exists is the streaming company like CEOs, and they've just forgotten television. And so
Yeah.
they're like, hey, look, how can we get more? We're like, well, what if we split up a couple of times an episode and we'll pop some sponsored ads in, and we'll 30 seconds, and we'll make some money from that. And then they're talking about like, oh, well, what if all of our streaming services, like what if HBO, Netflix, Hulu, Apple Plus, what if we all combine and we have one platform that people just pay one price a month for with all of our stuff? And it's like, oh, you mean cable? Like what we did for
Exactly.
like, it's just reverting back to exactly the same thing, and it's just the dumbest but the funniest thing ever to see.
Well, I do appreciate and accept the concept of like, okay, this episode, if I were to watch this episode or an episode of television, let's say I watch an hour of TV a night on network television, out of that hour, you're going to see 15 minutes of commercials. That's just,
Yeah.
A 30-minute episode is about 22 minutes long.
Yep.
Of actual content. So you're getting about 15 minutes. Okay, you tell me 15 minutes a day is going to be dedicated to advertisement, or you can pay $15 a month.
Yep.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. But now I'm paying $15 a month, and they're still sneaking in the advertisements here and there. They're
Right.
still like, oh, well, this is going to be the flatline rate, and we're going to be $25.99 a month for no ads. It's like,
And that's one platform.
yeah, and
Yeah.
dude, that the best thing that ever happened to me. It's happened a couple times over, but it really gives me pause. I am terrible about like starting an app or downloading an app, and it's like I need it for one reason. I need it to convert an Apple file to a movie file or whatever it is. So I download this thing. It's $1.99 a month. Forget about it. Next day, I need a photo editor. It's $2.99. I don't care. It's reoccurring billing. So
Yeah.
I had an incident with a fraud charge on my card. Actually, it went through a spell for about 2 weeks where I sign into Facebook, which I don't use very often, but I would go to sign in there. Oh, your account has been compromised. You must change your password now. Like, not like, would you like to change it? Like, give us a phone number. We need to verify it's you. Change your password now. Instagram comes up, the same thing. All my emails, my Apple on my phone, my Apple ID needed a new password. And then I get this charge from Washington, D.C. for like $125 on Amazon. I was like, okay, so this is different, because before I've had credit card problems, but they got my Facebook, my Instagram.
Wow.
I mean, I literally had to go through my saved passwords and change the majority of them. But what I was getting at is, whenever I've had these situations before, I get those updated emails of like, hey, billing failure, billing failure, billing failure. Dude, I was spending $150, $200 a month. This was a year or so ago on just reoccurring billing for those little $2, $3, $5 a month kind of things
that you haven't used since that first day you downloaded it.
Exactly. So it was like, oh, this is a blessing. Like, this is a good thing that my card got compromised. I get to reassess what I'm looking at here. So now I stay on top of that stuff. I got one of those like debt not monitors, I guess. It's like, where's your money actually going kind of thing. Yeah. And dude, it's been nice because, I make enough money that I don't have to check my balance to go eat. I can afford things, but I don't make so much money that I can just haphazardly spend, right?
Right.
So having this thing on there is like, I'm actually making progressive forward motion, because it's like, oh, well, there's I say, boom, that is not going back into the circulation of things I can spend. So you can kind of allot your money a little more directed. So now instead of like at the end of the month, you've got this lump sum of cash. No, even though it's not like actually moving in a bank, it's moving in my view to where I only have this much money to spend, or I only have this much money available to me right now. And it's just a discipline tool. You know, it's just one of those things. Like because I'm on the road right now. I'm on the road a lot. Man, I'll just pull into this fast food place and like I've been going to Long John Silver's a lot lately because they actually have a blackened salmon, rice, and green bean meal that is perfect to the calorie count of what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you go for that 10 days in a row, you're at $150. You know, so
Yep.
okay, well, what does that meal cost if I make it ahead? Okay, now it's a $5 meal instead of $12 or $13.
Right.
That kind of thing. So not that I was like blowing money left and right, but if you're not paying attention, you are.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You're not staying aware of what you're spending money on. You're not aware of what you're spending your money on. Dude, so this was like a look in the face, you know?
Yeah. I always say like one of the best budgeting things ever. One of the best budgeting things ever is to like just go get a new card or lose your card and then just not update what you're paying for.
Yeah,
because you'll get like you said, you'll get all the emails that'll tell you like your billing for this didn't go through, like do you want to update your card, and then you get like you said like 25 of those emails, and then all of a sudden you're like, holy crud, like no, I'm not updating it for 19 of these.
Right.
And like you said, all of a sudden, boom, $150 a month I'm not spending anymore.
And it's like, you know, you do that there. I'm going to eat out, I'm going to prep my meals, which again, that instills intrinsic discipline, because now when I'm home, there's a Long John Silver's right there. But if I'm on the road, okay, now I'm at a Wendy's or now I'm at a McDonald's.
Yeah.
Now it's like, how do I find the meal that fits this? So again, just by, well, I'm paying double, almost triple for this meal. What if I cooked it at home? What if I prepared? So like for me, discipline begets discipline.
Yep.
You know, like when I start organizing myself, organizing my life, my finances, relationships, all of those things get kind of restructured into their proper place. Man, I want more of that feeling.
Yeah.
The problem for a guy like me is when I get to the point of like, okay, I'm in cruise control. Like this is automatic now.
Yeah.
You know, so discipline is almost funny to me when I don't think about it. Like when I'm so ingrained in it, because then it's like, this is easy. Like I'm conquering this. So I think for a guy like me, I don't know how to juggle it to where it's like, okay, do I stop focusing on this thing for a few months and focus on a new thing so I stay motivated and productive? Right. Or do I just keep adding more things, because at some point the discipline is going to break the camel's back? You know, it's like, where is that line? You know?
Well, I'll ask you this too, because this is actually one of the things that we were talking about prior to jumping on. One of the things I wanted to talk about today, and it leads right into this. For you, because so for a little bit of backstory, like I was telling you, these last handful of weeks around here, we're getting ready for a lot of like home changes and, you know, doing this whole process and a lot of things that aren't usually a part of our daily lives or structure, or things that we need to take care of, right? And throughout a lot of it, as the husband, the father, like I feel like I know that there's this responsibility that I have, that there's a lot of things that take priority in certain time frames of life, right? Like, look, this is a couple of months that are going to be kind of crazy. Like there's things we need to get done. And so I tend to prioritize this, how I do things. Like I'll kind of put stuff in little boxes in my head, right? And now these things over here that I know we've got 2 months, I got to get as much of this stuff done as I can. That gets the priority. And it oftentimes can come at the expense of some of those other boxes, right? And I know it's not like a forever thing, but in the middle of that, I'm realizing, dang, like I haven't really had a good training session in like a week and a half, right? Like I've done some movement, I've gone to some jiu-jitsu classes, I've done some things that are keeping me moving, and then I'm moving boxes, I'm doing all this stuff that's very physical all day, but I'm not like in my normal routine of things because everything is kind of all over the place. And so when you're talking about how you go through these chunks of discipline where do I need to do something that keeps me kind of intrinsically motivated or maybe externally motivated by something, right? For me, I'm like, when I don't have that regular outlet physically, the way I handle stress and all of these other things that are now taking priority is really bad. Like
Yeah.
I get grumpy, there's all of these things that it's a compound effect. If I'm not training well or consistently during these times, like it makes everything else, it makes me not deal with everything else as well.
Yeah.
And I know that, like you said, you've had some of those same things too. So when you're in those types of phases, how do you prioritize getting the things done that need to get done for a certain amount of time, but then how do we also make sure we're devoting the energy necessary for us to be still at the top of our game to do all these other things? Does that make sense?
Yeah, man. That's a tough one because I would not look at any one person and tell them I have that question figured out.
Yeah.
I think that my balance is imbalance, and I'm not saying that as a cool statement. I'm saying that as like, man, it's really hard, because for me, I'm much like you. I can look at 100 projects that need to get done, say from a working standpoint or a business standpoint, and I can get so focused on those that I stop training, I stop going to jujitsu, I stop worrying about my meals, and I get those things done. And I think this is where a lot of men fall. It's like, what, man, to be a man these days, you've got 150,000 boxes to check. Like you've got to do jujitsu, you got to do ice baths, you got to train 4 days a week, you got to journal, you got to read a book, you got to love your wife, you got to raise your kids, you got to go to a job, you got to start a business. It's like boom, 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 boom. For me, and I think this is kind of like, I've been working on this idea for a number of years, but there's something about like the lifelong athlete syndrome.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but for me, when and this is a tell. So anybody that watches my Instagram or Facebook or anything, when you start seeing those meals pop up, when you start seeing me training hard, dedicatedly 4 or 5 days a week, I am falling apart. You know what I mean? Like I personally am falling apart. So I have to resort to that discipline to somewhat bring me out of that hole. Um, so that's really where I operate. Is like,
Yeah.
I understand that my body is the vehicle that is going to get everything else in my life done. It is the mind, it is the body, it is the soul, it is the character of who I am. Better at everything else I do if this vehicle gets better. And for me,
Yep.
that's why when I am like at a standstill, when I'm not able to make those breakthroughs, when I'm not able to find the mindset to do the things I need to do, I double down, triple down on my physical discipline, because that for me has always been the I don't want to say the scapegoat, but it has always been the thing that I knew with 100% of surety I could control it. Like I can control when I go to bed, when I get up, what I do with those hours in between. And that's when, okay, my body's changing, my sleep is better. And that's what I'm saying. It's like all of those things are there. Like I never don't train. I never don't put food in my mouth. But when I am struggling personally, those things get kicked up. Like, okay. And part of it is, like I told you, I get stress relief from training. I never get the same kind of stress relief from lifting a weight that I do from jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I've told you before, I run hot, I run aggressive. Like that is just my natural default, is that I'm aggressive, kind of. That's just how I'm wired.
Yeah.
And when I don't have those outlets, I get madder and madder and madder about things, to a point that I still, as a 41-year-old man, have yet to figure out how to curb that anger without effort. Because part of it, I think, becomes a self-loathing. Like you're just like I get mad at myself because I can't do it all.
Yep.
And then I double down again, and it's like, okay, you got your body in line, you're reading again, you're journaling, you're thinking about life, you're thinking about your soul, you're thinking about the afterlife, like all the things that I go through in a day. and it's like, now let's get on these projects. And for a while, I do really good. But then the breadth of things that I'm trying to hold is the undoing of my discipline, because I can't do it. And then it becomes like, I'm just falling apart. Like, okay, I'm going to skip the gym. I got to get this. Shit, I don't need to eat that meal. I'm going to go grab Wendy's. So for me, I will tell you that, like, I guess I do fake it till I make it, even though I hate that term.
Right.
But it is like, I always know I'm going to get back. But it's bipolar effect where, man, I'm really, really, really driven, and then I fall off a little bit. But the good news is now at 41, my fall offs don't drop as far.
Right.
You know, like, and I also have the wherewithal to know this is partly my own doing. So just step back, look at things from a different angle. Do you need to 5 times a week? Do you need 5 nights a week? Do you need to get up in the morning and do 5 sessions of yoga? Like, but that's my answer to the chaos. Like, I can control this thing, and that's where I have to travel. And I just don't know how to keep the fucking yarn wrapped. You know, like, I can wrap it up. I can have it this tight little bundle, and then it comes undone again. So that's been my biggest struggle as a man. Even Austin Freeland from Sornex told me, he was like, dude, when you have something that we're like, go do this, you're a miss.
Yeah.
Approach things. But when I am like kind of meandering my own way, trying to, well, this is important. Well, it's not important to the people that it should be important to. So, you know, I kind of find myself struggling with that. Like, what do I do next? How do I get myself further in life? How do I evolve this thing so that I don't unravel again? Never figured it out.
I think that's really, I don't even want to say common. I think it's kind of ingrained in men anyways, to be kind of like how you were describing it, is like kind of like a bird dog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a pointer. Yep. Like you go out, like when we went sage grouse hunting a couple years ago, the dog that we were with, like, he's running around and he is like, he knows exactly what he's there for.
Yep.
You know, and then he finds something and he dead freezes and he does his job, and like, they love the work. Like, they love doing the job. It's not like they wish they were back in the truck laying down, or they get too hot or whatever. Like, those dogs love that job, you know. And it's the same with like any kind of like sled dogs or whatever. Like, they literally are born and love that. Like, that's how they know that they're living, essentially. And I think that's how men are. Like, if there's something to be done, like, we need to know this is objective A, this is objective B, this is objective C. Go get the 3 things done. You know, like, when you do that, you have your next 3 things after. You know, and because that's totally, I'm the same. That's totally how I am. If I know this is my timeline, these are the things that need to get done, I can zero in and get them done. But if it's like, hey, look, get this done when you have a minute, like, this is something that we should work on one time, this would be cool, like, hey, can you maybe give a couple minutes towards this or whatever, then it's like, I don't know where to focus. And I have this, not that I have a hard time necessarily prioritizing, but it's like, what really needs to be done. And I kind of wander, or like I've described it before, as like, I just kind of float. Like, I can be, you know, 70% productive and still get some stuff done, but it's like, I'm kind of just floating through some of those days, rather than, and it's not like I need to wake up and be that bird dog every day, but there's the sense of drive that comes with knowing exactly what to work for or work towards, that makes it easier to do those things. You know, it's not like it makes it more difficult to stay disciplined. It actually makes it easier, because I think that's kind of just how we're wired to focus.
Yeah. Well, and I think even too, the athlete syndrome, that's not a real thing. So just clarify, it's not a real thing, but it is just a concept. So, but I think that is very much how I grew up, was like, the sport was what I wanted to do. That was my objective. But there were like sub objectives. Okay, you gotta get good grades. I didn't get 4.0. I got good enough grades. You got a girlfriend. Okay, I didn't pour into my high school girlfriend like mean, obviously, I don't think any guy is pouring into his high school girlfriend the way that you want to a woman. But I also think
Right.
that, like, okay, I've got to call her. I've got to make sure that that box is checked as far as I called her, you know, said hello in the hallway, blah, blah, blah. It's like I can get very, very black and white with my production. You know, it's like, okay, get good enough grades to play ball, be good
Yep.
to your girlfriend, like whatever it is. And then it's like, I got to play basketball in high school or soccer or whatever it was. It wasn't like I was doing those things to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
Those things well enough so that they allowed me to do the thing that I really wanted to do.
Right.
You know? And I think that too is like, you've got the house and it needs a repair. Well, I'll get to it. You know, I'll get to it one day. I'll get to it one day. Or when you start it, it's like, I just want to get this studio, go back. You know, obviously I'm effective and I can get things done. I built that deck and everything, the Oasis at my place. I have a training space outside.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not an idiot. Like I am very, very dedicated to the things I care about. Because that's what's needed. I got to believe in that rectangle before I can build it, you know, where I don't get excited about it or I have. I sit there and I talk about being the best man that I can be. I talk about being a better man than I am. Talk about all this stuff. And it's like, am I really putting in the effort to be the best man that I am? And then that flips the coin to like, can a guy just catch a fucking break every just relax and like everything doesn't have to be perfect. Everything doesn't have, you know, like, you know, that's my frustrations with myself, but it's also some of that is a reduction I hear. Needs to be done or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to half-ass, but I also don't want to give my full attention to things I don't give two shits about. But sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
But like, I have that athlete brain of like, this is my one thing. This is my thing that I'm caring about. This is my thing that everything else is working towards. And right or wrong, I have structured my life that way many.
Oh, I think I lost you there, man. He will return.
Are you there?
There he is.
Can you hear me? There he
Yep.
is. I don't know what happened. That was really strange.
It
Sorry
was, I
about that.
think, just connection. No, you're good. It was just a little spotty for a minute, and then you were gone.
Okay, well, just to revert back to what I was.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the feelings that I'm talking about are my own, but it's
Mm.
also somewhat of a response of the men that reach out to me. And I think the biggest struggle is there are a lot of guys like me that, for the things that truly matter to me, you're only going to get one mode. Like if I
Yeah.
care about something, it is hell or high water, all I've got. But so much of life is the minutia. It's the in between. It's the things that are inconsequential, maybe to the thing that I care about, but it lends itself to the thing that I care about. So
Yeah.
for me to understand why, I think the failure in my life has been that I put the things that I'm either good at or interested in above all else, and that dictates the layout of my life.
Yeah.
Rather than like getting my life the right way, and then it's like, oh, I have the opportunity to do this really awesome thing because I took care of my other shit. That is a clear fail point for me, in that I don't generally view the things that I want to do in the same regard as the things I have to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a human thing. Like I don't think that's a mind blowing statement, but it's very, very difficult for me to give the same effort to things I don't care about, that may need that level of attention and detail
Yeah.
before I can do the thing I really want to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, when you think about it too, that was exactly, I mean, I'm sure you were the same. I'm pretty sure I know you were the same growing up. That's how I was taught to work. Like,
Yeah.
you kind of said the same thing about sports, but it was like, look, this needs done. These are the things you have to do around the house. When this is done, then you can go do what you want.
Well, see, I was
Like
too,
that
but
was
I hated every second of it.
right.
Like
Exactly.
I cussing my mom
Right.
under my breath or my dad. Like
Right.
I only did it because I feared the whipping. I didn't do it because I was like, oh, I'm a good boy, I'm going to do this. I was like, I'm a bad kid. Busted ass over not doing this. And that has followed me forever. Is that I think that I am intrinsically a bad guy that wants to be a good guy,
Hmm.
and probably proving that more often than not. But it's not that I'm a bad guy with like bad intentions. It's
Right.
just I live as a bad. Always see the rules as other people see them.
Hmm.
Like stop signs and red lights and lines in the road are just suggestions. Like you know, I
I
don't have
always
to
make
stop.
I, I
Huh?
always make I always make the joke at stop signs. It's like a teenager joke, and my wife hates it. But if I kind of roll through one, I'll always like, you don't have to stop at the ones that are outlined in white,
Yeah,
and they're
exactly.
and they're all outlined in white. She's like, you should have to stop saying that. I'm like, what?
Dude, laws are just. This is funny. This is a side note, but I was having this conversation. Actually, I've had it a couple times recently. But laws are such a funny thing because they're typically only set up to protect the weak. Which was
Mm,
like the royalty or the king. Because if he was doing the good of the people, if he was doing the bidding of his people, they would have loved him and cherished him. They would
right.
harm him.
Right.
But because most of the kings were assholes and raising taxes and stealing lands,
Yeah.
oh, I need walls. I need laws. I need these things to protect and prop me up. Nature has no laws other than the strong.
Yeah.
That is it. And the strongest is not a strength, like as a muscular strength. It is the will. It is the capability to find when others can't. It's the strongest is the most persistent, the most will. And I think it's funny that so many of these laws and really society today as a whole is structured to insulate and protect the weak. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
it's a funny thing,
Well,
but has no relevance to anything else we're talking about other than I think there's a lot of guys out there too that would make that statement that I'm a bad guy, good guy incorrectly because I'm not a bad guy. I'm not
right.
like my intentions are not to hurt people. Now, you hurt me, it's a different story. You hurt somebody I love, it's an even different story than that. But that's not I don't wake up polishing a gun to go out and save the world or do harm in the world.
Right.
I'm just trying to navigate 24 hours at a time and big picture, yeah, I've done it. I'm successful. I've got the things that a lot of people might say, I wish I had your life. I wish I had the mindset where I didn't always feel like I hadn't done anything, you know?
Yeah. The thing that I just thought about, and it's, I don't know if I've ever, I mean, I've thought about it before, and I want to see if you've ever had the same thought. I'm pretty fascinated, partly because it's where I live, right? But like the stories of the Old West,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like when people were pioneering out here in the early 1800s and the whole 19th century, really, when it really was the Wild West,
Mm-hmm.
right? And talking about laws and codes and all this kind of stuff. And there wasn't, I mean, like in all these towns there was the sheriff
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a couple of deputies, right? And like that was the police force,
Mm-hmm.
and most things were handled without the need for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it wasn't there, sure, there were guys that were shooting each other in the streets still, or but they're dueling, right? Or like they
Yeah.
get in a bar fight and they take it outside and they go until someone backs off and then it's over, right?
Yeah.
And I think about this as in relation to what we kind of see now, with how so much more either surveillance or police involved. I'm seeing the opposite on the other side. Like there are people who don't back off when somebody's down in a
Yeah.
fight. You know what I mean? And terrible things that happen when people decide that they want to do harm, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like before there was even less quote unquote surveillance. I mean, there was no surveillance, but like there was less policing. And I don't know if it's like I don't know if I'm working it out in my head. I'm kind of working it out as I'm talking, but it's like back then we had less, but there was less. So was it
Yeah.
a cause? Was it a causation effect, or was it something totally different? Like, or is it something that was changing in us over time? And I tend to believe it's a little bit more of that, especially in the last few decades, where we see a lot of mental health issues and all of these things that kind of crop up that didn't exist before.
Well, it's funny that you talk about this because this is something I've actually journaled about myself, is like in self-analysis, right?
Yeah,
So let's say you get in a fight right now. What is your go-to thought process of like, I just want to end this as quickly as I can, or man, I could get in real trouble for this, so I'm already going to get in trouble for punching the guy. I'm going to
yeah,
fucking go to the end of the earth.
mm,
That's more my stance. Is
yeah,
like, once I try when and again, I could swing on somebody that kicked my ass and shot me in the head. Like, I'm not saying this is Billy Badass. I'm just saying that is typically my mindset. Is once I'm in, I'm in. Like, whatever this comes out to be, that's what it's going to be. Dude just about killed somebody over here beside me. That's cool. Um, but more than that, it's like, I'm going to go way obtuse here, but I think the mindset that I have in that regard is similar to why we're seeing some of the violence in schools. Um, my best friend and I from middle school, high school, actually started from a fist fight, and shortly thereafter, like, didn't even know why we were fighting,
yeah,
and then it became kind of stupid, and we laughed about it. And I think that's what happens is you get a kid that maybe is perpetually bullied, sees no way out, school doesn't help. I dealt with this shit when my son was small, had a fucking bully whose parents were bigger pieces of shit than the kid was. And like every time that this was called out, like my kid had long hair, this kid throws gum in it, and it's like, had to cut the hair or had to cut it's just shit like that. Kids are kids. I get it. But the parents of the child were adamant that he wasn't a problem, blah, 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 blah. So this
mm,
kid, my son, not that he felt this way, but it'd be very easy for that kid to feel like, man, nobody's going to help me.
yeah,
I have to do this myself.
yeah,
Oh, I can't fight that guy because he's 2 grades old, much bigger kid. Man, maybe I should just shoot that motherfucker. And like, I'm not saying that's what's happening,
Right.
But I am saying from a place of myself as an adult where I'm like, man, I'm in some trouble here. I don't know my way out of this. I'm going to become a Wolverine. Like, I'm going to be as hard to handle as I can if this man puts his hands on me, whatever that means. That's not good either. But I also think it's very much a survival. It's a survival tool.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, you know, I think for the most part, people want to color inside the lines. You know, they don't want to cause any problems. They don't want to be any problems. But dude, the world is full of problems, and they're agitating. Like they're accumulating, and they're getting, like you said, it's not just I want to go to school and beat up the bully. I want to go to school and kill this bully, and I want to kill all his friends, and I want to kill the teacher that didn't stop it. Now, I don't know 1% or 50% of any of the equation. It just seems like to me, like you said, buddy, you go into a bar and start running your mouth, and you've got the fear of a guy squaring up on you saying, "Hey, let's go to the street. I got a gun. Let's throw down." You might not run your suck so much.
Yeah.
You know, and whereas you go get in a fight, you hit somebody, they hit you, you squabble around, bleeding. We're fighting over some girl in a bar, and it's like, man, that was stupid. Let me buy you a beer. I don't know that that's going to happen 100% of the time either. Like, I don't know it's going to be.
I don't know if that happens at all anymore. Like, you know,
right. I'm saying it's like that at least that argument, or at least that potential to be less and less and less than the extreme. And I don't think that we have as many as extreme people as we are seeing extreme acts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
they get highlighted,
I don't know.
Obviously.
Yeah. I don't know why it's happening, and I don't know why it's happening more. I just don't know, man. Is it people like us that are like really trying to search themselves out, and they're so unsure of what to do that they make mistakes, or they choose to do the wrong things, or what? But I don't know. I really struggle with that on many fronts, because it's just like this morning, right before we got on the phone, some dude cut me off, and I like stick my hand out the window, like, all good, man, no problem. Starts flipping me off, comes over by the side here. And I'm not saying this again to be Billy Badass. I've got 7 knives and 2 guns in my truck right now. Actually, I've got 4 guns in my truck right now. So it's like, you're just going to roll up on somebody and start talking shit because it was your fault? Well, if I'm a different type of person in a different type of setting, we're going to have a different type of conversation.
Yeah.
Or if we're in the street, not in vehicles. But anyway, it's like, doesn't this come from that guy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why is that the go-to? But I think, to kind of rewind all this back to one point, when we talked about the Old West and we talked about focus and discipline and these things, I worked on a farm when I was growing up. And every day when we get to the farm, we get our little breakfast and we'd be talking about the day. I can tell you with a surety, I never had more than 3 tasks to complete in one day.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to go out here and we're going to set this field for tobacco. You're going to come in and you're going to move the cattle from this field to this field. You're done. You do that. Doesn't matter if it's 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Once you're done with that, you're done. I think that is a huge contribution to people's happiness back then, because it's like, okay, my day kind of winds down when the job is done.
Right.
Well, now, if you believe in modern society's constant, like, shoved down your throat, the job, another business till 5, and then you better be going to lift weights and take your kids to swimming and shoot guns with your wife and all this. It's like, there's just too many expectations on our days. Yeah. And I think that is where mental illness, because our brains, not getting, there's been cases of mental illness forever. There's always been crazies, and there's always been like misalignment. But this is the question that I am curious. And again, I'm sorry I'm all over the place as I unravel this. What if mental illness in modern times was actually a superpower previously, based on the construct of life? Like, what if your ability, you know, like, let's just say someone with bipolar, and this is way non-scientific, but let's say, what if their bipolar episodes, or manic or their depressive episodes, revolved around the seasons, and it made them more adaptable to those seasons for some reason? Like, it's the winter, you're depressed. Okay, get up and move. Get out and get the sunlight. Get working. Okay, in the summer, you're manic. Like, all this stuff. I don't know that that's the case, but
Interesting.
Where in the human experience did people start deciding what normal was, what well adjusted was? They're doing that so much altogether now. It's like, oh, I just hit a big total, so I'm going to write a powerlifting book, or I did this thing and I'm going to write this and I'm going to write this. We're really trying to chronicle our lives as we live it, rather than reflecting and looking back. We're trying to create our story as we tell it.
Right.
You know, it's just none of that makes any sense whatsoever individually, but when you kind of put it all together, it's like we're more crazy than we've ever been. We're just as violent, if not more so, than we've ever been. But we live in of luxury and comfort at a level that we've never seen. So, is that the answer? Is comfort and luxury and excess the answer to happiness? Because from what I see, from what the literature says about mental health in this country, from what the diagnosis and prescription drugs say about the health and state of the mental capacity of this country, is we are losing. We are losing ground. No other country has the problems that we have, and I've traveled quite a bit. Is it a cultural thing? Is it American culture? Is it a human thing? Is it like, and to bring it all back to men, can't figure it out. You can't figure it out. A lot. Like, this is on our brains a lot. So how does an average guy that is caught up in the storm of, I get up at 5, get my kids up at 6, drop the kids off at 7:15, pick them up at 3, baseball at 5, training at 7 for me, you know, try to get dinner on the table before 9. Like, how do they do it? And what can be done if you can't do it or you don't feel like you're doing it?
Yeah, that right in the middle of where I am right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's what started this whole conversation, is how, and it's not even about necessarily priorities, but there's I kind of view it as the responsibility. Like, we have these things that need done, what needs done, and then what do I have time for after? And I think what happens is we tend to put the things that should be in the what needs done box somewhere else. A lot of times
they'll always be there.
Right, because we think they'll always be there, right? But then but what happens often, like with me, and I know like what you were talking about with yourself too, is sometimes my training should be my training should be in the what needs to be done box. Because I know when I do it, I'm better at these other things that actually need done. But when I put it over here, then everything else starts to slip, and I'm wondering why. And it's like, well, dude, you haven't done anything physical in a week and a half. Like, you're not as sharp as you need to be, you know? And it's like, it's simpler of a solution than we want to make it, because we know that it's like, it's just one decision a day. Like, go sweat for 20 minutes. Like, you're gonna feel sharper after that. But we want to make it 40 other things that we think was the problem. And it's like, it's not. It's simple. Here's, like, we're talking about, here's your 3 things today. Like you said, I was the same. Every summer job I had was working for my dad for his, like, he's in farming industry, right? He's not a farmer, but he's what's called an agronomist. And so he tells farmers essentially how to grow everything. So he'll go out and take soil samples and tell them, like, here's how much to water, here's what you put on the stuff, you know, here's when we're doing all this. He schedules everything out for these huge, you know, tens of thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres of farms. And my job every summer was to go out and walk in 40 different fields a day and take plant samples every 10 feet for 3 pivot tracks. And then on the way back out, like, make a pie shape and put them in a bag, mark them what field it was, like what growth stage, whatever plant or whatever crop it was, take it back to his lab. So I'm like outside walking fields all day long. It's the same thing. It's like, these are the lists of fields I have today. If I get up and I'm in my first field at 5:30, I'm done at 1:30 or 2 o'clock. But if I decide to sleep in and I'm like, oh, I'll get to my first field around 7 or 7:30, not only and now in the middle of July am I outside working in 110-degree heat in the middle of the afternoon and it's miserable, but it's like, now I'm not done until 4 or 5. You know,
for sure.
So it's like, we have these things of our need to do's or our tasks that when we have them, it's just, man, we can be so right on and put these things right where they need to go. And I think that's where, for me, and it's how I'm still trying to figure this out, because I'm in a new phase. Now there's a second child, right?
Yeah.
So now we're managing 2 children. Now we're managing all of these other things, and it's every time something different changes, I have to relearn how to manage the household.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because it's never the same. And then if, in several months, when if we're in a new house, now we've literally got a new house. Like, I've got to learn
Right.
how to manage everything in this new location, how we're going to do these chores, how we're going to get involved with everything. So it's never there. I don't think there's ever going to be this point where it's like, here's how I can operate forever, and everything is going to be
Yeah.
the same. I can't just literally check this same 4 boxes every day, because all sorts of things change in my life. Maybe there's another child in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Right now we've got 3. Maybe I've got another business that pops up that transitions into another thing. Like, there's always something to manage, but having those staples of my need to do's and having training be in that block, like, that can at least alleviate how I handle some of that stuff by making me sharper. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, do you think the ultimate rebel in modern society is the guy that simplifies to, like, not to say a monk, but maybe a monk-like status,
Yeah, dude.
Because what's being told to us repeatedly is the never-ending vacation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think that for a guy like myself that has traveled extensively, I've heard multiple times, man, oh, you should come to this, but it's probably not as cool as you think because you've been all around the world.
Yeah.
It's not as cool as you think because you've been around the world. Well, at some point in my travels around the world, I lost any what home was.
Mm.
The road became home. And I think that when something like that becomes home, it's almost an addiction in and of itself.
Yeah.
An addiction can become anything that alters your ability to do the things you need to do for your life.
Yep.
And we talk about alcohol as an escape, we talk about drugs as an escape. Well, what about the perpetual traveler?
Yeah.
The person that cannot put roots down anywhere. And that's the realization I've had about myself. So looking at myself and the life that I've lived, you can get to a point where travel becomes like, oh, it's just the next place, it's just the next thing. So I do agree with you that we cannot have these static existences, because things do have to change and they need their place. But man, I sure do wish sometimes, and this sounds like a very privileged statement, having been around the world 2 or 3 times, I have for sure forgotten at times how lucky and fortunate I was to be seeing what I was seeing.
Oh yeah.
And when I travel, I get a different perspective on things. I take more time on things. I slow myself down because, one, I'm not trying to prove to you that I'm having a good time by showing you 1,000 photos of my good time. Most of the time now, if I can find myself having a good enough time, I wish I had pictures of that because it was so great.
Mm-hmm.
But, what I'm getting at is, for people, are we doing these things to the point we lose their value? It's like, the guy that goes out and sleeps with a girl every time that he goes in a bar. It's like, what is the value gain there? What did you really get from that interaction? Did you get anything from that conversation? Or were you just thinking about your orgasm and the next one and the next one and the next one? And like, what is that actually filling as far as a void in your life? Or is it just deepening the hole? Is it creating more of a void in your life? Because now when you approach a woman that might be perfectly compatible, perfectly suitable as a relationship, your angle is, I got to get my fix, And I think that a lot of times in life, especially with the pace that it is, that people are under, many times trap of actually improving our lives by seeking the thing that is going to be a void. Like, I just want to feel a little better right now. That right woman next time. That right person will be out there next time. Or I won't drink when I go out the next time. But tonight I want to feel better. Tonight I want to feel better. And it's like, at some point, thing becomes a negative. you know,
Yeah.
if you frame it poorly. So that's what I'm trying to do with my life, I guess, as a whole, is put things in their appropriate place. Don't take the big things for granted, and don't do so much of the big things that they become the norm. You know, like,
Yeah.
don't don't make travel so constant that when you travel, it's like, ugh, again. You know, like, you should be going somewhere and doing things that you are fully recognizing as, man, this is better than what I could be doing if I stay.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm going to grow from this. I'm going to gain from this. And I don't even know that people are searching for gain or growth in the things that they do. It's like, as long as I can make you believe that I've gained or grown, I've gained or grown. But I think that also an intrinsic hollow feeling inside, you know?
It makes me think kind of what you had said a couple minutes ago, about like who are the rebels, right? And it makes me tie it back in even to to talking about the Old West, because I think who I've always made a distinction in my head, and whether it's a correct distinction or not, I'm not sure, but I've always made a distinction between who are outlaws and criminals.
Yeah. Oh, there's a
Like,
difference.
I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that, and so I've always made a distinction in my head, and I don't know if I could articulate what I think the distinction is, and maybe you can, but when you're talking about like who are the rebels now or who are the outlaws now, I
Yeah.
imagine it's just the people that are moving away from where popular culture is telling them they need to be, and not abiding by, not and in some literal cases it's laws now, right? Like, and
Yeah.
so the actual term does apply, but it looks a lot like the outlaws now look a lot different than what they did 200 years ago. You know what I
Oh,
mean? And
and
I
I think
almost,
that's a,
yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I think it's just a softening of people, you know, like,
Yeah.
and not that everybody should go out and then, like, join an MC and start wearing leathers, you know, like, that's kind of
Right.
what comes to mind is like that 70s, 80s, 90s outlaw. But I do think you're right, is maybe the outlaw now is an intellectual outlaw. You know, you're reading things on both sides of every for yourself. You're actually formulating ideas from information, not from just what you're told. And that goes some idea that Phil English talked about, like, do you believe this because you bled for it or because your mama told you to? And that's such a pervasive thought for me. But I worked in a bar, and it was a rough bar. Okay, it was a strip club. I was a bouncer, and what you would get in that setting was very diverse. Like, you get the guys in the business suits around 8:30, 9 o'clock. You would get, you know, and I'm just speaking honestly. I don't care if this offends anybody or not. Like, you would literally have businessmen come in, all black, white, Mexican, whatever. They come in at 5, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock. You get the Mexican workers that went home. 10 o'clock, you get the black guys coming in. So you have this, like, strange world, and then 10:30 or 11, the bikers roll in. Working in a bar, to tell you the truth, I got a gun put in my stomach. The next night I was given off, and my replacement was my manager's brother. He was shot in the back of the head over doing his job 3 times in the parking lot. So this place was rough. And one instance showed me what an outlaw was versus what a bad guy was. So
Yeah.
this businessman comes in, and he slung coke to the girls. Like, he was a legitimate banker, but he always had coke on him. He always, like, spread coke, buy drinks, whatever. And this guy comes into him, and I guess there was a coke deal that went bad. And the businessman and they're fucking. And my assumption is the bikers probably sold him coke, or they bought coke from him, and shit went south. Well, this biker, his name was Beans, because he always kept, like, gram bags of coke in his pocket, and he called them beans. Like, can I get a bean? Can I get a bean? So they called him Beans, and he's literally beating the shit out of this guy on the ground, this businessman in a 3-piece suit, hair slicked back, big diamond cluster rings, Rolex watch. He beats the shit out of him. And at the end of it all, he said, "Fuck with me again and I'll kill you." He's like, "What's your money gonna do for you now? Take off that fucking watch." And the fact of the matter is, the outlaw had principle. He had a code that he was holding and standing by and upholding. The businessman would fuck any girl with a pussy, would sell drugs to a kid, would do anything he could to make more money. And that outlaw, so who was the crook, right? The outlaw sure looks like a bad guy, but the crook was the guy in the business suit, and the outlaw put him in his place. To me, outlaws are robbing, right? They're going to get theirs, but they're not going to take from you unless you warrant it. That's the difference in a criminal and an outlaw, to me.
Yeah.
Outlaws have a code. Criminals do not. If that makes any sense.
It does, and it makes me wonder, like, anymore, who are those people? Like,
we need them. I mean, we need them. We need people who aren't afraid of the law and who aren't afraid of doing right outside of the law. That's always been a belief of mine, and I believe it more now than ever.
Well, and it makes me, it still just, I have these, I don't know how accurate they are, because the only representation I've ever seen of this time is through like movies and you know, I've read books about you know, Wyatt Earp and those days, right? But how often anymore does, and I guess we each know somebody, we know somebody mutually who has sort of this story where it's like, I don't hear many guys that just go get in trouble and they have to spend a night in jail, and then they get to go home and everything's fine, and they're almost like friendly with the police that bring them in there, because they're like, they're almost kind of just protecting them. But it makes me think of stories of a mutual friend that we have, you know, that he would like be training and police would come while he's back squatting and like, all right, let's go. Like, you did this before, like, we need to take you in now. And he's like, give me a minute, I'm finishing my set or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there's those kind of guys out there where they're not malicious. They're not out there to like harm anybody or cause harm, but they're also, like you said, they're not afraid of getting in trouble for doing something that violates what they believe.
Yeah, well, and I think too, so this is a micro situation, but this was yesterday. I got into a coffee shop and I'm in line, and this coffee shop is like impossible to get in and out of. Impossible. If anybody in the line is an asshole. So I leave a buffer of about 2 car lengths, 4 cars behind me. There's a buffer of 2 car lengths so that people that are parked there can pull in and out of their spot, or you can pull in and park. I'm waiting in line. This lady in a Mercedes whips in front of me and like pulls into the line. Well, you know, I'm a pretty aggressive person, and you know, it pissed me off. But I was sitting there looking behind me, and I could see people like in line, like hitting their like, what the fuck, you know, going on and on. Situation that this woman is like an archetype of a particular female subset that I cannot stand. Like, it cannot stand. Like, she has no discipline in her life whatsoever. Heavy set woman, and not that heavy set women are my problem. Heavy set women that live in the lap of luxury and try to mask their inability to have any discipline. They had their nails done, they had their hair done, they're wearing a big fancy watch, driving a big fancy brand new car. She is just living in the lap of comfort and excess, right? Like, there's nothing about her life where she actually struggles for anything. And this is what got me out of my truck. I walked up there and I pecked on her window, and of course, I mean, I'm fresh out of jiu-jitsu, so I'm like sweaty, padded mess. No shirt on. And I had a clean shirt in here, so I put the shirt on, peck on the window, and I'm like, you know, you cut line, right? She said, oh, honey, I'm in a hurry. And I said, the back of the line is there, and the best thing I can tell you to do is get the fuck to the back of the line. And she pulled out of the parking lot and left completely. And, you know, we pulled up and got our coffee. That doesn't make me a good guy, but I did the right thing. You know, like this is somebody who is a perpetual line cutter. You know what I mean? And that is
wasn't
where
the first time she'd done that.
right. And that is the thing that, like, I'm not saying go out and punch everybody, shoot everybody, or stab everybody, but when somebody's a piece of shit, there should be somebody in the room that checks them. You know, just like on that plane where that dude was like threatening to stab everyone and kill everyone, and you had a dude falling asleep listening to his headphones in front of him, like his eyes are like heavy. That's not an outlaw. That's just doing what's right. And sometimes you got to do some bad shit to do the right thing. Sometimes it's as petty as picking on a woman's window and telling her to get to the back of the fucking line. Sometimes it's knocking somebody out, and sometimes it's more than that. But I think in this society, we are structured so heavily to not interfere. Don't get your hands dirty on anything. I think that's why we're in the shape we're in, because if some guy comes up and says something smart to your wife, I feel like you have an obligation at this point to set him correct. Doesn't mean you have to hit him, but it means you can check him. And if he's an asshole after that, you might hit him. I just don't think there's enough of that in the world. Like, people checking the assholes. As dumb and terrible as that sounds. That's what she said. Just out here checking assholes, man.
So this I just realized, and this would have been a perfect opportunity for it had I realized how to do this before, but I realized today that I have a soundboard over here that I can put sound effects into and just click them in, and it'll drop them live into the thing like old radio. So that would have been like the perfect. I'm gonna see if I can do it real quick. If we do like, I don't know if it'll do it.
Yes.
Oh, that was good. So that might be a part of future shows, is this soundboard. I'll have to find something.
Oh, I hope so. But no, that's something else I struggle with too, because, you know, kind of the life I've lived, it's put me in situations where I've had to fight a lot more than I probably should have. But I can honestly say this: I've never hurt a child, I've never hit a woman, and I've never hurt a good guy. You know, like, or I've never even approached a good guy in a bad way. Most people that I think get it have it coming to them, and I think, I don't know that that's an absolution as far as a solution for the masses, but man, certain people need to just start enacting upon that. Like, when you see some bullshit, call it bullshit. You know? But I don't know, man. I don't have the answers.
That should be the name of this show, actually, because I think we both say that at least a couple times every episode, is I don't have the answers.
Well,
it's true though.
There's a beautiful honesty to it, though, as a counterpoint. So everybody that's out here selling you the solution to your life. You know, like, you're a great coach. You work with men all the time. I've been a coach. I've worked with men more often than I haven't, as far as like, about this kind of stuff. Doesn't mean we have all the answers. Just means that we know there are parameters that can make your life better. But you have to do that work. And I think that's what's so valuable from this podcast, is hopefully dispelling some of the rumor that, I think if a person hires you and you've got some open coaching spots right now, if they hire you, their life is going to improve. But it's not going to be because you're sitting there micromanaging them. You're going to give them some tools, and they have to learn how to use those tools appropriately for their life. These things where it's like, you come to this weekend getaway and we paint ourselves and we pretend like we're warriors, and we smoke some weed and we do some ayahuasca, and you're going to go home and life's going to be better. You're fucking wrong. Like, there is no good life that is an overnight decision. Most things in life take a lot of effort, and they take more thought before the effort. And that leaves me coming back to the statement of, I don't have the answers. I certainly don't have the answers for myself. You know, I'm still trying to find those out. And I think anybody that tells you they have it figured out is a con artist. And maybe they're trying to believe that themselves. You know?
I agree. All right, man. I think that was a good wrap-up spot.
Oh, I think it's great.
I'm going to do this right here.
There you go.
That's gonna be too fun. I'm gonna try not to overdo that and ruin it for everybody. But I just discovered it like an hour ago.
It's your new toy.
It's a new toy.
You get to play with it for a little
while. All right, man. We'll call it there, and we'll be back next week.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for always being flexible, dude.
Always, buddy.